Welcome, David Friedman.
Is this thing on? Yours here. The term market failure gets used a lot, and like many technical terms, it sounds as though it is self-explanatory. It sounds as though you can figure out what it means from the name, and like most technical terms, you can't. And I would like to try to explain that there really is something called market failure. It really is a problem, but it is not a problem limited to markets. It is a much more general issue in what humans do. I will try to be explaining, first, what market failure is, second, why it can be used as an argument against the free market, but why it is actually a stronger argument against the alternative to the free market, because market failure is the exception on the private market, but the norm on the political market. I also want to talk about the relevance of the idea of market failure to things other than politics, because although you may not believe it, there are things in life other than politics. And that includes marriage, war, and how to make money. What is market failure? Market failure is a situation where individually rational behavior does not lead to group rational behavior, where each individual acts correctly in his own interest and we are worse off as a result. And it occurs in cases where my act helps me but harms you, and your act helps you but harms me, so that each of us is better off because he takes his act, but worse off because we take our acts. It is a pattern that occurs in many places other than markets. My favorite example is to imagine that it's 1,000 years ago somewhere in Europe, and you are one of 10,000 people standing in a line with spears. And your spears are all pointed that way. And the reason they are all pointed that way is that coming at you are another 10,000 people on horseback with spears. And you do a very quick cost-benefit calculation. If we all stand and keep our spears planted, with luck we will stop their charge. And some of us will die, but many of us will live. If we run, horses run faster than we do. I should stand. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I said we. I don't control him and him. If they run and I stand, I die. If they stand and I run, I'm not going to be the one of the ones who is killed when we break their charge, and if we don't break their charge, at least I'll be a little ahead. Whatever the other people do, it is in my interest to run. Everybody makes that calculation. We all run, and most of us die. Welcome to the dark side of rationality. That's the basic logic of market failure, situations of that sort. Another example is a traffic intersection where, as the light turns red, cars coming this way keep crowding in. The light goes red. Now this road is blocked. The cars get out of the intersection just in time for the cars coming this way to block the intersection as their light goes red. Everybody would get home sooner if everybody was polite and didn't pull into the intersection until it was clear, but each person would get home later if only he did that. Finally, a pattern I have seen, I think at least twice in the last 3 days. Everybody is in a restaurant. Everyone wants to be heard. It's hard to be heard because everybody else is talking, so you talk louder. And so does everybody else. So these are all examples of the pattern of market failure that are not in what we usually think of as markets. Why is market failure an argument against the free market? Because the simple argument for freedom is that each person acts in his own interest. He makes the decisions for himself that maximize his benefit. Added up, and that maximizes everybody's benefit, so there's no need for government to intervene to change what people do. It's a very simple argument. Unfortunately, it's wrong, like many simple arguments. What's wrong with it is that it doesn't apply if I get the benefit of my act and you get the cost. then the act that maximizes my benefit doesn't maximize ours. So I might do something even though the cost, including your cost, was bigger than the benefit, making us on net worse off. And economists refer to these as negative externalities. Sometimes it's the other way around. I pay the cost and you get the benefit. When I make a radio broadcast, you can listen, but I can't charge you for it because I can't control who hears it. Similarly for basic research in science. So I might not do something even though the benefit is bigger than the cost, and thus miss an opportunity to make us better off. And this is what economists call the public good problem. The producer cannot control who gets the good, so cannot charge for it. Sometimes there are ways around these forms of market failure. For example, sometimes the two people who affect each other can go into one firm, such as a shopping center, where keeping the space in front of your store would be a public good if you were on the street, but the shopping center rents space, and that space is more valuable if the people running the shopping center maintain a nice, clean environment. Some public good problems can be dealt with by being ingenious. Some unknown genius realized that the way to be able to broadcast radio was to combine a public good with a positive value and a positive cost called a program, with a public good with a negative value and negative cost called an advertisement. It has negative cost because they'll pay the station to put it on. But there is no guarantee that in the free market, individually rational behavior will always produce group rational behavior. And that's the reason that most economists, unfortunately, are less in favor of free markets than I am and than I suspect you are. Because that implies that a sufficiently wise and benevolent government could step in and make the world better, could improve the situation by regulating air pollution, by subsidizing radio and television, by, in various ways, solving market failures on the private market. But this assumes that it is in the interest of government actors to make the right decisions, to take those acts that make all of us better off. Otherwise, government intervention might make things worse instead of better, which brings us to market failure on the political market. Market failure on the private market occurs because occasionally I take an act where someone else bears the cost. Most political decisions are made by people who neither pay the cost nor receive the benefit. There is therefore no reason to expect that it will be in the interest of political actors to take the actions that maximize net benefit for everybody. For example, let me start with the political actor you are most sympathetic to, namely you. In order for democracy to work, voters must be well informed. They must know who are the good guys and the bad guys so they can vote the good guys in and the bad guys out. And for some odd reason, the bad guys never campaign with a slogan, "I'm the bad guy." So in order for it to work, the voters have to spend a lot of time and effort figuring out what politician did what and whether he should have. Each voter knows that if he does that, the chance that his vote will change who is elected is very, very close to zero in a large society. And if by any unlikely chance he does get the good guy in, the benefit of that will be shared with everyone in the society. Therefore, it is rational to be ignorant, and most voters, in fact, are ignorant. And if voters are rationally ignorant, that means they support the policies that sound good to somebody who doesn't know very much, has no incentive to learn more, and that gives what we have all observed in my country, and I am sure in yours, a politics of sound bites and demagoguery. Political actors have a very short time horizon. They are not interested in the future, because a politician who does politically costly things now, such as spending money maintaining the water system of Sao Paulo, when he could have spent it buying votes, will lose the next election in order to prevent a problem for a different politician 20 years later. It is not in his interest to do that. It is true politicians always pretend to be interested in the future, because since the voters can't see the future, If you're lucky, you can persuade them that you're giving them good things in the future and only the bad things are now. Joseph Stalin did that for a very long time. He could not persuade the Russians that they weren't hungry, miserable, and badly housed, but he could say, these are the sacrifices we are making so that your children will be as rich as the Americans. Eventually, people stopped believing it, but it took a while. But in fact, politicians make their decisions mostly in terms of the next election, not because they're stupid, not because they're evil, but because that is the rational way to behave given the situation they are in. Consider drug regulation, medical drug regulation.